Who is Davros? Our greatest scientist. It has been more than 50.5 years since the 6-part Doctor Who adventure Genesis of the Daleks aired. Often cited as the greatest Doctor Who story of all time, even winning the 1998 poll by readers of Doctor Who magazine and consistently retaining a third place position on successive polls in 2009, 2014, and even 2023, when it initially got voted second best Fourth Doctor story in the Fourth Doctor Stories ranking, but then retopping the winner City of Death in the later overall poll. There was a bit of a cheat. This story has gone down in history as not only the most popular story of the classic run, if not the whole show, but also introduced us to the character of Davros, the in-universe creator of the Daleks. Inspired by the 2007 documentary Davros Connections for the Davros Collection DVD box set, and later included on the Remembrance of the Daleks Special Edition DVD, and also inspired by Matt's timeline videos on this channel, I decided for Davros's golden anniversary, plus maybe half a year, I thought I would delve in to looking at Davros's interesting but also secretly convoluted timeline. By the way, I'm using TARDIS Wiki for most of my information, so if there's any misinformation or anything I've missed, blame them. Apologies about that. Be free to mention the corrections down in the comments below. I will. There's a mistake there. Also, if I'm looking down quite a bit, sorry about that. Using a script. Anyway, let's begin. Davros was born within the last century of the Skaro Thousand-Year War, which, according to the 2021 book Dalek Combat Training Manual, the timelines place Davros' life taking place prior to Earth's 2nd century. However, the Dalek Handbook from 2011 has the events of Genesis of the Daleks take place during Earth's 15th century, 500 years before the events of the Daleks, which supposedly, according to them, takes place in 1963, which is to then line up with the Dalek invasion of Earth taking place in 2157 through to 2167. Yeah, wibbly wobbly timey-wimey. Also, 2150 is for the movie, not the TV series. Most of Davros' early history we will be discussing comes from Big Finish's 2006 audio miniseries I, Davros, although other accounts will be touched upon. Davros was the second child born to Khalid politician Lady Calcula, who had an affair with her boss, Councillor Quested. Davros believed his stepfather, Colonel Nasgard, was his biological father. Nasgard himself was a soldier in the Khalid military elite. The rest of Davros' family consisted of an older half-sister, Yarvel, and aunt, Tasek. Fun fact, Yarvel's name is based on Yarveling, which was the name of the original creator of the Daleks in the TV Century comics back in the 1960s. In the 2022 short story Last of the Daleks from the short story collection Origin Stories, Yarvel dared Davros to go into the battlegrounds on the planet's surface. It's here Davros got stuck in the hand minefield, and when he would encounter the Doctor for the first time, as seen in the 2015 story The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar. His first Doctor, the uber mega chad Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor. The 12th Doctor would arrive to save Davros and throw him the sonic screwdriver, but upon hearing the name of the boy, the Doctor would run away. He would return to save Davros by using a Dalek gunstick to shoot the hand mines. After teaching Davros about mercy, he takes him home. According to Last of the Daleks, this takes place 2 weeks after Colonel Nasgard has died, but the first episode of I, Davros, Innocent, takes place during Davros' teenage years, and to me, Davros in The Magician's Apprentice looks like he's in his preteens, so we've got a bit of contradicting factors here. That, or I'm very wrong about the boy's age in the episode, but he does look like he's younger than 13, but older than 8, so I'm saying he's probably about 10. Later, in the I, Davros continuity, or earlier in the Last of the Daleks continuity, Calcula had Nasgard and Tasker assassinated with a bomb to prevent the truth of Davros' parenthood to be known, and then frames Major Brogan Nazgard's number 2, Yarvel's boyfriend, and a secret PACE activist for Nazgard's murder, so he was an easy target to frame. He is then executed by Yarvel, who had just joined the elite, and soon afterwards, Davros kills his real father and attempted to kill his teacher, Magratine, who'd survive and go on to live as a Muto to a later encounter with Davros. Davros then joins the military youth, later using his scientific skills and placed in charge of creating new weapons for them, much to his frustration. He hates it. Relations with his sister have now worsened as she has become a peace activist, whilst he believes science will win the war. Calcula soon murders Yarvel and later took charge of the Khalid military youth. But when her assistant, section leader Fenn, tricked her into getting into Davros' laboratory, they ended up getting exposed to radiation. Davros would witness them becoming mutations and soon began to focus on his scientific career. During this time, Davros would end up meeting and working with a scientist called Shan, whom he would have feelings for, despite her being in a relationship with a counselor called Valon. However, whilst she would support Davros' experiments, she would turn against him, which would lead him to brand both her and Valron as traitors and have them executed. This is becoming a common thing in this family, a decision he would come to regret later. It's worth noting that in the 2003 Big Finish audio Davros, where these events are mentioned, Shan is revealed to be the one who came up with the anagram Dalek instead of Davros himself, or one of his assistants like Ronson or Castavillian hearing it from the Doctor. Now, depending on the timelines, Davros has his accident in his laboratory a month after his mother's death and developing an interest in what would become the Dalek casings in I, Davros. However, in the Children in Need 2023 minisode, Destination Skaro, these events would take place later, as Davros creates the Daleks, as well as after meeting former soldier Nida, who becomes his right hand, or should that be left hand, man. In either timeline, Davros would survive his accident and would later develop a way to survive by creating a life support chair similar to the tank casings the Daleks would be placed in. Aided by Nida, Davros would experiment on a foul spy called Baran. This is where the I, Davros timeline concludes, but the Destination Skaro timeline would see the 14th Doctor meet Davros' assistant, Castavillian, during the development of the Daleks. Davros doesn't encounter the Doctor here, but the Doctor does provide Castavillian with the anagram name Dalek and a sink plunger to replace a damaged weapon as the manipulator arm. Davros would return shortly afterwards and lights the sink plunger as a manipulator arm, replacing the original weapon idea. In this timeline, Davros has his accidents after these events. And after all that, Davros soon begins to mass produce the Dalek mutants and casings and testing the weaponry. Unfortunately, he would remove positive emotions from them and implicate fascist ideology into their minds. We finally made it, folks. We come to Davros' debut story in terms of broadcast and release-wise, with the first television story featuring him, 1975's Genesis of the Daleks. In this story, the Fourth Doctor, Sarah Jane Smith, and Harry Sullivan are sent on a mission by the Time Lords to avert the creation of the Daleks or alter their behaviour so that they become more peaceful creatures. This is to prevent them from becoming the most powerful and deadly creatures in the universe. But as events go on, Davros would betray his own people in order to stop the Khalid politicians from interfering with the Dalek experiments, leading to the Thals wiping them out, with Davros sending the Daleks to exterminate the Thals, ending the war with both sides losing. Not a surprise there. Soon Davros would learn by torturing the Doctor and his friends of the Dalek battles in the future, and how they were defeated. Meanwhile, the scientific elite that Davros was leading committed a mutiny that was soon swiftly ended by the Daleks. The Doctor contemplates destroying the Daleks, but ends up delaying his decision, leading to the Daleks ultimately exterminating Davros, Nida, and the scientists loyal to him, whilst the Doctor damages the incubators, so the development of the Daleks is set back by about 1,000 years, give or take, leading to the TARDIS team escaping and returning to the Nerva Beacon. But it turned out Davros wasn't dead. He was just in suspended animation caused by the backup life support system in his chair. During this time, he was still conscious and sensed something was wrong when, during the events of the Big Finish Bernie Summerfield audio The Lights of Skaro, Ace misused the Omega device in a failed attempt to put Skaro in a time lock. Fortunately, she, Benny, and the Doctor were able to fix this. In the 2021 webcast, Risen, aka the mini-so part of the Doctor Who The Collection Season 17 Blu-ray box set trailer, Davros starts to awaken as he senses the Daleks' impending arrival on their return to Skaro. This nicely brings us into Davros' second on-screen appearance, the 1979 TV story Destiny of the Daleks. In this story, the Daleks have returned to Skaro to get Davros' help in reprogramming their battle computers whilst fighting the robot species the Movellans. However, the Fourth Doctor found Davros first, and whilst the Daleks would get to him shortly after, they and the Movellans were soon defeated by the Doctor, Romana, and Dalek prisoners. Davros was then frozen and taken by the humans in the Movellan ship back to Earth to answer for his crimes. In the 2021 Big Finish Dalek Universe 3 stories, The Dalek Defense and The Triumph of Davros, the 10th Doctor and Anya Kingdom, that's the niece of Brett Vion and Sarah Kingdom from 1965 to 66, the Daleks' master plan, by the way, also board the Movellan ship whilst a Dalek fleet was inbound. The Doctor would defrost Davros and attempt to use him as a bargaining chip, but the ship would ultimately crash on Kemble and encountered the first Movellan, who turned out to be the previously thought to be dead Mark VII. Davros and the Doctor would be put to work making weapons, and later Davros attempted to create an alliance between the Daleks and the Movellans. However, he would instead create a virus to attack the Movellans and escaped with the Daleks. The Doctor was able to isolate the virus, and Davros would be abandoned on Kemble till human forces arrived and recaptured him, refreezing him to return to Earth and stand trial, for which he resulted in an indefinite sentence of suspended animation on a prison ship, once again conscious for every second, and for the next 90 years Davros stayed. All the while, the Movellans would develop a similar virus to attack the Daleks and win their war. In the 1984 TV story Resurrection of the Daleks, the Daleks invade the prison ship. Davros is held on in order to rescue him and get him to create a cure for the Movellan virus, which they've hidden in St. Catherine's Docks in London, near Tower Bridge, by the way, in 1984. The Daleks have also planned to replace human politicians with duplicates. They also plan to duplicate the Fifth Doctor, Tegan Travanka and Vizsla Turlough, in order to send them on a mission to assassinate the High Council of Gallifrey, and have brought the real Fifth Doctor, Tegan and Turlough, to Earth 1984 as part of their plans, for some reason. And whilst this is going on, Davros secretly experiments on Daleks and brings them and human agents under his own control. The Doctor sets out to kill Davros, but is unable to, and soon Davros and the Supreme Daleks factions of Daleks would battle each other in St. Catherine's Docks warehouses, which results in a stalemate. Davros would then get infected by the virus, but would escape from his prison ship, exploding after Dalek agent Stein set it to self-destruct. Davros would overcome the virus and drift through space in an escape pod. It's worth noting that Davros recognises the Doctor, despite them changing their face and personality. We've gone from the 4th to the 5th Doctors, let alone the fact that Davros has also met the 12th and 10th Doctors by this point, and narrowly avoided meeting 14 as well. But somehow he's able to know that all of these guys are the same person. And also, it's at this point in the classic series that Davros and the Daleks now know the Doctor is a Time Lord from the planet Gallifrey. We return to the 2003 Big Finish audio Davros next. Davros would eventually arrive on the planet Phobos and experiment on the human colonists regarding their emotions, before eventually being picked up by a different space station and locked in its vault until he was rescued by Arnold and Lorraine Baines, who owned and ran the company Transallied Inc. After rescuing him, Arnold then gave Davros a job in the company whilst Lorraine wanted to be his biographer. The 6th Doctor then arrives and pleads for Davros to be placed in suspended animation, but he is unable to do it himself, leading to Arnold to hire the Doctor as well. Much like in The Witch's Familiar, this leads to a discussion between the two former enemies, where Davros considers the Doctor the closest thing he has to a friend. Think 2014's Five Who fans' Death of the Doctor's Aimless Wanderings fan audio story, except this is nowhere near as funny. Davros isn't dying in this story, unlike Death of the Davros, but he is starting to reconcile on memories from his past, mainly about Shan, who we mentioned earlier. Meanwhile, in the present, Davros begins to gain hold of the stock market to seize military control. Eventually, Davros is successful in taking over the company and kills Arnold and several others until the Doctor thwarts him and sends him packing in a new ship, which then crashes. What is it with all these ships in the future? They're useless. They keep crashing. Fortunately for Davros, he crashed onto the planet Necros. There, he became the Great Healer, where at the funeral business Tranquil Repose, he would take charge of the business and on the surface make it look like things are normal, but secretly, he is taking bodies of the dead and turning them into either new Daleks or as protein for food to send across the universe. He teams up with a businesswoman called Kara to distribute his food product across the universe, and this is when the events of the 1985 TV story Revelation of the Daleks begin. Kara is fully aware of who Davros really is, and she has hired Orcini, a knight of the Grand Order of Oberon, to assassinate him. Davros, predicting such a thing, manages to make a robotic second version of him as a decoy and tricks Orcini and his squire Boskov, into thinking they have successfully killed him before they are captured. After Kara was brought to Davros, she revealed she gave Orcini a bomb to destroy himself and Boskov with Davros, and is killed by Orcini. Davros also came up with a scheme to bring the Sixth Doctor and Perry Brown to Necros 4 as essentially a prank. The Doctor and Perry were there to attend the funeral of Arthur Stengros, a friend of the Doctor, but whilst visiting they discovered one of Davros' experiments en route to Tranquil Repose, and later they discover a giant statue of the Doctor, which then falls on top of him, but it's okay, it's fake. After this happened, the Doctor is captured along with Stengos' daughter, Natasha, and her friend Grigori, who were trying to find Arthur's body, sensing something was a bit sus. They were freed by Orcini and Boskov, but Natasha and Grigori are sadly killed whilst sabotaging the Dalek factory they had found. Also, Davros has the Daleks killed that awesome DJ Perry hangs out with. Bastard! The Doctor was recaptured by the Daleks, and he and Perry were both brought to Davros. Oh, and there's this whole subplot about him hating the head of Tranquil Repose, Joe Bell, and trying to get his assistant Tesson Baker to kill him, which she does, but only after she tries to get him to run away because Davros wants him, but he turns down her feelings towards him despite being a womanizer. So she kills him, but the Daleks knew that she tried to help him, therefore betraying Davros. So right afterwards they kill her as well. Yeah, there's quite a bit of stuff going on in this story. Anyway, before his death, Boskov shoots off Davros' hand, which is why he has a metal robotic hand after this story. And fellow Tranquil Repose employees Tarkus and Lit call in Daleks loyal to the Supreme Dalek to arrive and capture Davros. The two factions fight, but the Skaro Daleks win and capture Davros, taking him back to Skaro to stand trial, and the surviving Necros Daleks are to be reconditioned to obey the Supreme. However, in the 2005 Big Finish audio, the Juggernaut, whilst en route to Skaro, the Dalek ship crashes on the planet Lethe. Davros and some of his Necros Daleks survive, and then he sets himself up as Professor Vaso and alters the perception of the humans working there to disguise himself after Earth branded him a fugitive. Whilst on Lethe, Davros begins to create a new machine called a Juggernaut to be service robots and assist the human colonists. The Juggernauts were in fact cyborgs with human DNA placed in the shell of the robot species Mechanoids, old enemies of the Daleks. See the chase. The Doctor's companion Mel Bush soon arrives and helps the colonists with the Juggernaut program, whilst Daleks loyal to the Supreme enlist the Sixth Doctor with helping capture Davros. When the Doctor arrives, he recognises Davros but struggles to convince everyone about who he really is until Davros himself confesses to Mel and sets his plan in motion until the Supreme Daleks faction of Daleks arrives to capture him and to destroy his Daleks and Juggernauts, and Mel reprograms the last Juggernaut to attack Davros, with his chair self-destruct system blowing up the colony. What remains of Davros is then taken back to Skaro to stand trial. Again. Well, I would say this time it actually happens, but first we got the most recent Davros appearance in the 2024 Big Finish audio, The Trials of a Time Lord, which take place next for Davros. Davros is time-scooped by the Master, the Anthony Amy Tremas version, to participate in a reality TV show by Ludosphere Incorporated. Very Deadly Games think Vengeance from Varos meets Bad Wolf. As a part of a revenge plot against the Sixth Doctor following the trial of a Time Lord, Davros initially teams up with Perry and Mel until he escapes and calls his Imperial Daleks to Ludosphere, planning to hijack the broadcast and turn everyone into Robomen. During a Daleks vs Cyberman battle, Davros and the Cyber Leader team up so both factions could focus on getting back at the Master and the Doctor. But this all fails as Davros, the Daleks, and the Cybermen are defeated, whilst the Doctor, Perry, Mel, and the Master all escape. Davros likely returns to Skaro to be placed on trial by the Supreme's loyal Daleks at this point. At last! There's a few accounts of Davros' trial that contradict each other, so we're going to have a few time anomalies around here. Right, so firstly in the 6-part 1993 Doctor Who magazine comic Emperor of the Daleks, Davros is put on trial by the Emperor Dalek and or a jury of Daleks, but before sentence is passed, the 6th Doctor rescues him and Davros makes it to Spiridon and teams up with the Daleks stranded there until the Skaro Daleks arrive and battle ensues, destroying the planet and leaving Davros once again highly injured and finally in his new Emperor Dalek casing. Oh, and also the 7th Doctor, Bernie Summerfield and Absam Dark are also here. Also between parts 1 and 4 of this story, the 1995 Doctor Who magazine comic strip Up Above the Gods takes place with the 6th Doctor and Davros hanging out in the TARDIS cloister rooms. An alternative telling of the trial in the 2007 Big Finish audio, the Davros mission, shows Davros proving his loyalty to the Daleks when a vile spy named Loreen attempted to find Davros' good side and gives him a capsule of the Muvalan virus to open during the trial. Instead of destroying his creations and becoming a hero, Davros betrays Loreen, and the Daleks are impressed with Davros enough for them to make him their new emperor. In both timelines, the Supreme Dalek then leads his renegade faction of Daleks and takes them away from Skaro, where the ones swearing loyalty to Davros become the Imperial Daleks. The Supreme's faction ends up becoming the Renegade Daleks. Begun. The second Dalek Civil War has. So a few things happen around this time. Firstly, in the 1993 Doctor Who magazine comic strip Time and Time Again, which is Doctor Who magazine's 30th anniversary story, Davros attempts to have the first Doctor assassinated, but is foiled by the 7th Doctor. Then in the 2012 Big Finish audio, The Curse of Davros, he tried to form an alliance with Napoleon Bonaparte to help him win the war with mind-swapping technology. However, the 6th Doctor would switch minds with Davros and warns Napoleon about Davros' plan to switch his mind with a Dalek, causing the alliance to fold. The Doctor then switches his mind back with Davros. Eventually, Davros would learn of an ancient Time Lord weapon called the Hand of Omega, which was hidden on Earth in 1963 by the 1st Doctor, and would lead the Imperial Dalek faction to retrieve it. And this leads to the events of the real best story of the classic series, the 1988 TV story Remembrance of the Daleks. Davros' plan is to use the weapon on Skaro's son, giving the Imperial Daleks the power to overthrow the Time Lords and become the most powerful creatures in the universe. However, the Renegades Daleks also learn of the weapon and attempts to retrieve it themselves, leading to battles between the two factions with each other and the British military under the command of Group Captain Chunky Gilmore all over London. East London. The military is assisted by the 7th Doctor and Dorothy H. McShane, the former of whom then plays the two sides of the Daleks by recovering the Hand of Omega themselves and then laying a trap for the Renegade Daleks first and the Imperial Daleks second. The latter of whom the Doctor revealed to that he reprogrammed the Hand of Omega to turn Skaro's son into a supernova, destroying Skaro before it returned to destroy the Imperial Dalek mothership. Davros would escape in, well, an escape pod. And it looks like there's different accounts of Davros' escape. Firstly, in the 1995 short story, The Shoreditch Incident, Davros' pod apparently falls to Earth, and he would go into hiding there whilst the countermeasures start looking around. Meanwhile, in the 1997 novel, War of the Daleks, Davros' pod drifts into space until it is discovered by a garbage ship called the Cortezelle, or something along those lines. With the 8th Doctor, Sam Jones, and a Thal force arriving on the ship soon after, the Thals attempt to take control and get Davros to alter their race in order to be better fighters against the Daleks. But the Daleks arrive and take everyone to Skaro, which turns out wasn't destroyed by the Hand of Omega, but instead the Hand of Omega destroyed a decoy planet called Antolin. Though Davros dismisses the idea and claims they're on a replacement planet. Yeah, this story is infamous for having a convoluted reason to why Skaro's still around in the 1996 TV movie, even if though it was destroyed by the Hand of Omega. Anyway, it turns out that the Dalek Prime wants to get rid of Davros' supporters and a civil war breaks out. Again. Eventually, Davros' forces are defeated as the Doctor, Sam, and their friends escape. Davros is supposedly sentenced to death by matter dispersal, but a spider Dalek, an unused concept from the Leakley Bible perhaps, who he had converted earlier, may have tampered with the execution, so Davros would return. In the 2013 Big Finish audio Daleks Among Us, Davros would make it to the planet Azimuth in order to attempt to contact the Daleks from another universe. There, Davros encounters the Seventh Doctor, Elizabeth Klein, and Will Arrowsmith, the latter of whom then tells Davros about the persuasion machine, and Davros desires to reinstate control over the Daleks, whilst trying to find a clone experiment he made years ago, Falcus, who, like little Petey from Dogman, considers himself to be Davros' son. And much like his father, Falcus then tries to torture the Doctor for information and brainwashes Klein. But it turns out that this Klein is in fact a duplicate, who then uses the machinery to destroy Falcus and the Daleks. Or the real Klein does. One of the two. Davros escaped in the Dalek time machine, but the Doctor diverts his escape pod to the Wraiths of Lemuria, who are a group of spirits dedicated to punishing criminals. But Davros would escape again in a escape capsule. Again. He then goes to the year 2254 AD. In the 1992 video game Dalek Attack, Davros witnesses the human race's advancements in scientific knowledge. Davros decides to lead a Dalek invasion of Earth in the 23rd century this time, and stole a time ring from Gallifrey. Ultimately, the Doctor, either in their second, fourth, or seventh incarnations, depending on player's choice, making this the only time the second Doctor's met Davros, lead a resistance against the Daleks and confront Davros on Skaro, with the rest of the Time Lords being hot on his tail. Davros is eventually frozen in time and sent adrift into space, but whilst drifting into space and or getting hold of another escape capsule, he would eventually create a new virus capable of killing everything. The same one the Fourth Doctor hypothesized to him all those years ago back in Genesis of the Daleks. This brings us to the 2005 audio from Big Finish, Terra Firma. Davros is rescued by some time-active creatures called the, I'm probably going to butcher the name here, Nekisitani, who he then kills and uses as bait for the Doctor to arrive as part of a trap for him. The Eighth Doctor arrives with siblings Gemma and Samson Griffin. During the adventure, Davros manages to take control of the Griffins. Samson knocks the Doctor out, so the Griffins can create a link to Davros and the TARDIS, leading to the Griffins returning home so Davros could conquer Earth via causing mutations to create new Daleks. The Eighth Doctor then loses all his memories of the Griffins. The Eighth Doctor having amnesia, you say? Not heard that one before, especially in the first decade after the TV movies airing. However, around this time, Davros' mental state starts to deteriorate. He starts to act more and behave like a Dalek, the Emperor of the Daleks, specifically. So next time Davros would meet the Eighth Doctor, who had just come back to our universe after leaving the Divergent universe, no, not that one, with Charlotte, Charlie Pollard, and Cariz, Davros has now got a split personality, his own and the Emperor's. Davros then clones his body in order to transfer his original mind into it, while still toying with the Doctor about the situation with Earth and the Griffins. Eventually, the Doctor strikes a deal with the Daleks to leave Earth with their true Emperor if he does not release the virus. The Daleks at this point do not consider Davros a reliable leader, so destroys his clone, shocking him into eventually losing the last piece of his original personality to the new Emperor one. But he would regain his original personality from the Emperor later, along with the remains of his body. Oh, you're going to love the next one, I promise. By this time, the Dalek civil war has died down, and Davros assists the Dalek in an invasion on Gryphon's Reach, a rebel Krillitane outpost. Here, the events of the 2020 short story, Father of the Daleks, from the Wintertime Paradox short story collection, takes place. In this story, the invasion is thwarted by none other than the 11th Doctor. Huh? Which leads to the Daleks kicking Davros out of the Dalek Empire. He plans on redeeming himself by using invisibility technology incorporated into the Daleks. Sound familiar? He then lures the Doctor to Alacrassius 4. Sound familiar? For one of their many Christmas truces. Don't ask. Anyway, Davros has the Daleks ambush the Doctor here, but the Doctor has a genius plan to offer his own life if the Daleks kill Davros as well. Wait, what? This is actually a bit out of character for the Doctor. even the 11th Doctor. Maybe it's a bluff. Well, it works because the Daleks agree and aim at Davros, intending to kill him too. But a failsafe system causes them to self-destruct, and Davros has basically had enough of this shit. And he considers abandoning the Daleks, only for the Last Great Time War to break out, and Davros accepts his creation's request to return. So Davros partook during the Last Great Time War. Now, it's worth noting that there was a second Davros coming in from an alternative timeline who was also around in the Last Great Time War. But we're sticking with the end-space Davros from the main timeline. In the very first year of the Time War, according to the 10th Doctor, and as told in the 2018 short story The Third Wise Man, from the anthology book 12 Angels Weeping, Davros is promised his own Dalek Legion by the Dalek Emperor, who has now come to accept him and asked him to create a new creature, a weapon so deadly that it would ultimately spell doom for Davros. Almost. This weapon was none other than the Nightmare Child, deemed the perfect Dalek by Davros. Unfortunately for him, it began to get hungry and would consume anything in its path, Daleks and Time Lords alike. Davros had no choice but to destroy it by sealing it in the gates of Elysium. However, this would cause Davros' command ship to fall into the jaws of the creature, which did not die, as it fell through the gates. Although he did send a distress call to the War Doctor, it was merely to get the Doctor to witness his death and be helpless to save him. But just before Davros' ship was destroyed, Dalek Khan, last of the cult of Skaro, arrived and saved Davros using his emergency temporal shift seen in Evolution of the Daleks. Because he broke through the Time War's time lock, Khan then goes mad, but he's successful in rescuing Davros and they both escape the Time War. After escaping, Davros decided to create a new race of Daleks from the cells of his own body and created a new fleet and planet-side space called the Crucible. In the 2008 TV story The Stolen Earth and Journey's End, Davros and his new Dalek Empire have based themselves in the Medusa Cascade and placed them 1 second into the future from the rest of the universe. Soon the Dalek Supreme took control of operations but made an arrangement with Davros to remain in the vault with Dalek Khan, continuing to scheme on behalf of his children. Together, Davros and the Daleks stole 27 planets, or 26 in the Lost Moon of Poosh, from across time and space, and placed them close to each other in the Medusa Cascade, with the Crucible in the centre. The 27 planets were placed in a way where, using said neutrino energy, they would be used to generate a new weapon, the Reality Bomb. Davros and the Daleks' long-term plan was to use the Reality Bomb to break down and disperse the atoms that built up the universe, leaving only the Daleks as the sole inhabitants of the universe. And this time they would deliberately keep the Doctor away from their plans. So things are looking more in their favour this time. However, thanks to the Doctor's friends on Earth, he was able to follow a signal from the Subwave Network, developed by Harriet Jones on behalf of the Mr. Copper Foundation. The Subwave Network had previously been a secret communication system connecting Captain Jack Harkness, Gwen Cooper, and Yanto Jones of Torchwood 3, Sarah Jane Smith, her son Luke and their computer, Mr. Smith, and Martha Jones and her mother Francine. Rose Tyler also had access, but couldn't communicate with the rest of the group. But the plan was to send a phone call signal to the 10th Doctor through Mr. Smith and a rift through Cardiff. Rose Wilmot and Sylvia Noble also helped with calling the number provided by Martha. Upon the Doctor and Donna Noble getting the call, the Subwave Network was detected by the Daleks, who went to kill Harriet Jones, who escaped according to the Harriet Jones PM poem in the 2017 poem book Now We Are 600, and control was transferred to Torchwood. Upon the Doctor and Donna joining the Subwave Network, Davros ordered the Supreme Dalek to give him access to it, allowing him to speak with the Doctor for the first time since the Time War, and giving Sarah Jane Smith a big shock. A horrible shock. A big, horrible shock. Well, it's nearly Christmas, I can do a Grinch reference. As Davros predicted, the Doctor would head to Earth to team up with his allies, who Davros and Dalek Khan would deem the Children of Time. Eventually, the Doctor and Rose were brought to Davros, where he showed them his reality bomb and its test on innocent humans. By the way, this is after the Doctor regenerates into himself, so it's 10th Doctor 2. or 10th Doctor B at this point now. Later, the Children of Time, now with the addition of Mickey Smith and Jackie Tyler, were all captured after threatening the Daleks with either the destruction of Earth or the destruction of the Crucible. And Davros tried to use the Doctor's emotional guilt against him regarding all the people he lost, specifically all the people from Series 1 to 4 of the new series, and turning his companions into weapons. Davros is a massive hypocrite around this point. However, the Metacrisis Doctor, who was created thanks to that aborted regeneration and Donna touching the hand that the energy went into. Long story. He then has his own attempt at killing Davros, but fails when Davros zaps him with a bolt of electricity from his metal hand, which he then does the same to Donna, which activates the Dr. Donna persona inside her, which she got from touching that hand jar that the regeneration energy was in, as I just mentioned. Davros and the Daleks were ready to detonate the reality bomb across the entire universe when the Dr. Donna awoke and pressed some buttons, shutting it down and preventing the Daleks from using their weapons. Except the Supreme Dalek, but Jack deals with that, and Mickey holds Davros at bay with Rose's gun. Soon, the two Doctors and Donna were able to send the planets back home, besides Earth, due to the Supreme Dalek damaging the controls, and Dalek Khan reveals he foresaw this and planned for the Doctor and Donna to come together to create the Doctor Donna. As the Doctor set a connection between Earth and the TARDIS to fly it home, Dalek Khan persuades the Metacrisis Doctor to create a Dalekanian backfeed reversal loop to destroy the Daleks and Crucible. The Doctor attempts to save Davros, but he refuses, naming the Doctor the Destroyer of Worlds. Davros seemingly dies with Dalek Khan, whilst the Doctors and Children of Time escape, but Davros and at least one other ship survived. The Daleks on board that ship, by the way, went on to create the new Dalek paradigm, who themselves would later rebuild Skaro and begin a new Dalek Empire. Somewhere in this time, Davros and a Dalek would appear at the Royal Albert Hall during the Doctor Who 2008 proms. This isn't really canon, but I thought I'd throw it in because Davros, or Julian Bleach playing Davros, is in character during this bit of the proms, as is Nicholas Briggs as the voice of the Dalek, and I believe Barnaby Edwards is the Dalek operator. So I thought I'd throw this in just for fun. So yeah, Davros and a Dalek basically take over the proms for a few minutes so that they can play some Dalek music. Specifically the Dark and Endless Night, maybe the Daleks theme from Series 1 as well. But after that they go and the proms continue as normal. Like I said, it's not really canon to the series, but I thought I'd throw it in as a fun bonus. I'm not sure if Davros appears in The Monsters Live in 2010, the 2010 musical live show. If he does, he's in that as well. I didn't see that. It wasn't filmed. I haven't seen any recordings of it. Haven't gone to any of the proms either, but I have watched the filmed versions. So if he's in The Monsters Live, then he does stuff there too. If he's not in that, then don't worry about that. Davros would eventually return to Skaro and his creations, with the planet having survived the Time War. Now dying, he enlists the help of colony staff. Davros then begins to remember meeting the 12th Doctor on Skaro as a child, whilst the same incarnation of the Doctor goes into hiding out of guilt and shame for his actions. Davros would send colony staff to look for him. We come full circle now with the events of the 2015 TV story The Magician's Apprentice and The Witch's Familiar. Colony staff goes to Essex, England in 1138 AD to find and capture the 12th Doctor, along with Clara Oswald, Missy and the TARDIS, and returns them to Skaro, where the Doctor would be forced to face Davros again. Davros has connected cables into himself and the life force of every Dalek as part of a plan to steal the Doctor's regeneration energy and give it to himself and the Daleks, rejuvenating them to survive without his life support system, and giving the Daleks the power of regeneration, much like what the Master would do with the Cybermen in The Timeless Children. Whilst talking to the Doctor, Davros taunts him over his compassion and congratulates him for saving Gallifrey, though this could be all part of his act. Davros was also able to switch off his one mechanical eye and open his two real eyes so he could see Skaro's sunrise one last time. This is what got the Doctor to touch colony staff's snakes to give Davros and the Daleks the regeneration energy until Missy shot them with a Dalek gun and then poked Davros' mechanical eye. However, the Doctor revealed he knew Davros' plan all along and allowed everything to happen and included the decaying Daleks in the Dalek sewers under the planet's surface. The decaying Daleks soon rose up and destroyed the city, including the infirmary Davros was in. But Davros survived once again. In the short story Secrets of the Dalek Laboratory from the 2017 Doctor Who Annual, published in 2016, Davros conducts a study on his children and determines that they are still his children and the ultimate lifeforms who shall exterminate every other being. Not a surprise to anybody. Seriously, what was the point of that study if he's just going to come to the same conclusion that he had before with no change added? Yeah, despite appearances, the Magician's Apprentice in The Witch's Familiar doesn't really change the dynamic between the Davros and the Doctor at all, other than making the Doctor go back and save Bubby Davros, so Davros can include Mercy into the Dalek, so the Doctor can discover that Clara had been put into a Dalek casing by Missy, which was sort of a bit of a prank on Missy as well. Well, we're up to date, at last. Now, there are alternative versions of Davros from other timelines and other universes, as well as some aborted plans for the show, like the Leakley Bible. But that's a video for another time. So, Davros' timeline. Outside of the 7 TV stories, it's a frickin' mess. Like the unit timeline, different expanded media stories, and even Children in Need minisodes will come in and rewrite what others have done. Not to mention the alternative Davroses I mentioned added to the mix, further confusing the audience. I'm looking at you, 8th Doctor Time War 4. Even though you're really good. But despite the contradictions and the complications, I need to give the expanded media a lot of credit for further exploring the character and putting them in new situations, especially Big Finish's audios during the mid-2000s, where they further developed Davros' relationship with the 6th Doctor twice, gave him a 4-part spin-off prequel miniseries that explored his pre-Genesis of the Daleks life, plus a bonus episode for the Davros Connections box set, which would also get released individually later, but later than the documentary did, and gave the character his own final end, Evil of the Dalek style, included, with Terra Firma, all before his big comeback on TV 20 years later after his last on-screen appearance. I also can't not mention Doctor Who magazine trying to keep the character alive in the 90s comics, and the interesting short stories of the 2010s and 20s inspired by the character. And Dalek Attack, I guess. But when all is said and done, this timeline does get very confusing once you move away from the 7 television stories, especially the first 5 from the classic series, which in some way all connect to each other. But even with the timeline being a mess in places, it's still interesting to see ideas like Dalek Universe 3, Davros, Emperor of the Daleks, War of the Daleks, and Terra Firma, just to name a few, all helping with expanding the character and the universe they reside in, and where and when they take place during the Whoniverse. Yes, it's incredibly frustrating to watch Davros in Destination Skaro, knowing that at this point in Davros, he's already had his accident. Yes, there are conflicting stories about Davros' trial between Revelation and Remembrance. Yes, that there being at least 2 Davroses during the Time War is confusing. But at the end of the day, that summarises Doctor Who's continuity in a nutshell. It's also messed up. It's 62 years worth of content, both on and off screen. We've got thousands and thousands of stories across all types of media, or almost all types of media. Aside from TV, you've got the film adaptation, you've got the books, you've got the short stories, you've got the audiobooks, you've got audio dramas, you've got the games, music. It's going to get incredibly messy somewhere along the line, so it's actually pretty good that it's only been a few places regarding the character of Davros where it's actually gotten a bit contradictory or convoluted, and it's mostly kind of stayed more or less straightforward elsewhere, especially when regarding the TV stories. But saying that, those contradictions and those different accounts do mean it is not immune to that problem. It is undeniable how big of an impact Davros has on the world and lore of Doctor Who over the last more than 50 years, and how much range storytellers have both on and off screen with him. As for the future of the character, I don't know what's to come. I'm going to get into the debate about Davros having his chair or not. That came around after the airing of Destination Skaro. I think it's a topic for another day, though personally I'd keep Davros the same in his chair, but address the fascist and evil ideology and explain that's what makes him evil and a villain, as opposed to his disability, which is nothing to do with his ideology. Him being disabled has nothing to do with him being evil or a villain. By modern standards, it's a bit unfortunate. Either way, I think there's still more that could be done with the character, either with a new Doctor moving forward, or going back to have adventures with a past Doctor. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video on Davros' timeline and his appearances across Doctor Who media. I want to give a quick thank you to Thomas for giving the original version of this script a look over and giving some notes that I then do a updated script based on some of that as well as my original. And regarding the Davroses that come from other universes, like the Unbound universe or the Palindrome universe, well, to quote the Reverend Wilbert Awdry, but that is a story for another day. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.